new fallout after an about-face by Israel saying it will allow Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib to enter the country. But now the left-wing lawmakers are making an about-face of her own. Brand new hour on America's Newsroom. Glad you're here. I'm Sandra Smith.
On a Friday. Smitty, good morning. I'm Bill Hemmer. Just yesterday, Israel blocked Tlaib and her colleague Ilhan Omar from a planned visit this weekend. They were blocked over their support for a boycott movement against Israel. Now, Israel did say it might allow Tlaib in on humanitarian grounds to visit her 90-year-old grandmother. But Tlaib tweeting moments ago, silencing me and treating me like a criminal is not what she wants for me. It would kill a piece of me. I have decided that visiting my grandmother under these oppressive conditions stands against everything I believe in, fighting against racism, oppression, and injustice. Rich Edson picks it up from there, from the State Department. The back and forth continues. Rich, what's up? Good morning.
Well, good morning, Bill. We've gone back and forth on this a couple of times in the past 24 hours. The Israeli government had originally granted Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib's request to visit her grandmother in the West Bank. Initially, when denying her request and the request of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar to enter Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tlaib could submit a humanitarian request to visit her relatives if she promised not to promote boycotts against Israel while there. Israeli media reports Tlaib had written to the Interior Minister there, agreeing to those conditions, but now it appears she's changing her mind. In the initial rejection, Netanyahu said, quote, "Only a few days ago we received their itinerary for their visit in Israel, which revealed that they plan to visit whose sole objective is to strengthen the boycott against us and deny Israel's legitimacy." Weeks earlier, the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Ron Dermer, had said that the Congresswoman would be allowed into the country because of the great respect the two countries have for one another and respect for the U.S. Congress. Yesterday, President Trump had tweeted it would show great weakness if Israel let them in, and then hours later the Israeli government said they weren't allowed to come in.
Okay, so a major meeting also today on Afghanistan. This could be significant news. Rich, what have you learned?
Yeah, President Trump later today is scheduled to have a meeting with his top security officials, including Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, on the negotiations the United States is having with the Taliban over Afghanistan. That's according to a couple of sources who are familiar with those discussions. Also, this is based on the fact that the chief U.S. negotiator, Zalmay Khalilzad, is back in the United States after his 8th round of discussions with Taliban leaders in Qatar to eventually try to reduce the U.S. presence there after 18 years of fighting. Though the problem, one of the problems, is that the Taliban has refused to negotiate with the elected Afghan government in all of this. Bill?
Rich, thank you. Developments on that as we get them from the State Department now. Here we go.
Our A-Team, our Friday A-Team is ready to roll. Juan Williams is here, Fox News political analyst and co-host of The Five. Cheryl Casoni, co-host of FBN AM on the Fox Business Network. And Lisa Booth, senior fellow at Independent Women's Voice and a Fox News contributor. And it's Friday, and I'm starting to lose my voice. So, Juan, let's start with you first on this, because both congresswomen, they're banned entry, although Israel made it clear if she could apply to go on humanitarian basis, you know, to see her grandmother, they granted her that. Now she says she won't go.
Well, I think this is all political posturing on both sides. I mean, clearly President Trump made an unprecedented effort to get an ally to ban a member of Congress from visiting the country. And what you saw was a response that came not only from Democrats, you know, Chuck Schumer saying that this is anti-democratic, but you had Kevin McCarthy, who's over there, the Republican leader in the House, saying everyone should visit.
Marco Rubio also.
Marco Rubio said much the same thing. And I think that you're seeing people say, you know, this is just too much of taking politics beyond the pale. Yes, we disagree with these congresswomen, but President Trump is now using this in a political fashion. And I think that what you're seeing now is that she is posturing and saying, well, oh, I won't go along with your effort now to try to make amends for the error that was made because it has had such a backlash in the United States.
Lisa?
Well, I would say that Israel says that their law prohibits the entry of people who call for the boycott of Israel. That is exactly what Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have done with their support of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. This is a movement that Nancy Pelosi has said that is bigoted and dangerous. This is a movement that Chairman Jerry Nadler said seeks the elimination of Israel. And this is also a movement that was rejected by a Democrat-controlled House, 398 to 17. So I think for those reasons, they don't want to allow these two members of Congress in, and I think that's fair.
Ilhan Omar, in her own words, saying it's an affront that Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu, under pressure from the president, Cheryl, would deny entry to representatives of the U.S. government. Trump's Muslim ban is what Israel is implementing, this time against two duly elected members of Congress.
Well, I think that, look, there are certain things that whether it's Tlaib or Omar will say that I disagree with. And I think their rhetoric is just as dangerous as some of the rhetoric that we get on the Republican side. At the same time, I think it's a dangerous precedent to deny a member of the United States Congress entry into Israel. I understand the Israelis' point that this group that was sponsoring their trip, actually, there are members of that group that the Israelis believe has sponsored terrorism against Israel. They were going to the West Bank. And one of the things, it's been several years since I've been in Jerusalem, but I was always impressed how the Israelis and the Palestinians actually would be able to work together, whether it was business, commerce, or just the fact that they're occupying a very small swath of real estate together. And I think it's a sad state of affairs when you've got, again, both sides of the aisle here in this country saying you really should let congressmen, or women in this case, visit. And I think it's unfortunate that we've actually come to this. It is politicized.
Here's
now.
Rush Limbaugh, soundbite number 2, guys. Go.
You have two women who are out of control in their hatred for Israel and Jewish people. They are, it's their lifeblood. Before they became elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, these women grew up hating Jews. They grew up as anti-Semites. I don't care if they've been elected to anything or not. That's who they are.
Well, I would just say I think Democrats really need to rethink the idea of standing in solidarity with people like Representatives Omar and Rashida Tlaib, who have expressed extremist points of view, particularly Omar. I think they should think twice about being seen as standing behind people with those viewpoints.
But, Lisa, you just said that, in fact, the Democratic majority in the House voted against the boycott resolution.
That's true, but they're standing
they're not
behind.
standing. I
They can stand behind the movement, but they're standing behind these two members of Congress.
They're not, because they're members of Congress.
But
it's the president who I think wants to make them the face of the Democrats, and that's just not the case.
But that's what is the case in terms of
But
you look at
based on these, Juan, he doesn't have to stretch too far to even make that happen.
Yeah, he is. What are you talking? Why do you think we're talking about it?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
We're talking about it.
Because the president absolutely broke all protocol by going to a foreign leader and saying, block a member of Congress, our nation's legislative branch, from coming to your country. It's unprecedented.
In the meantime, topic number 2 is in New Hampshire last night. Smitty, go ahead. And
well, the president took on this report that Biden allies apparently want him to take a break. He's had a series of gaffes. The president took that on last night and said this about the frontrunner.
I think Sleepy Joe may be able to limp across the finish line. But today they announced that they're going to cut way back on his appearances because he is such a disaster. They're going to have fewer appearances. You've heard that, right? This is certain. They're going to cut way back on his appearances. Can you believe it? If I ever did that, it would be over.
Right, who wants to take that one on first?
Can I say, really quick, I got to say, they're not going to win either way. Biden allies that are supposedly, it's been reportedly, they want him to pull back and not as many appearances. Well, then you might as well just be Hillary Clinton, because that's the Hillary Clinton mistake, 100% from 2016. Trump had 5 rallies, she had 1.
Juan agrees.
She didn't show up. I mean, that was her mistake.
David
so fine, go right ahead.
Axelrod, this is bad advice. You can't cloister the candidate and still win.
You can't. I mean, I don't. So how is that possible? I don't know how real this is because, the Fox poll still has Biden holding a lead. I mean, you see Elizabeth Warren coming a little closer. But Biden's consistently been in the lead, and the gaffes, doesn't seem to be shaking him that badly. It's not the Democrats who attack him on the gaffes, it's Republicans.
Do you think that's the case? Because you see Warren coming up right now.
She's taking
some of his support and all this.
No, I think it's taking some of Sanders.
I think it will have an impact in the long term. 1, on the issue of age. 2, it undercuts the narrative that somehow he's the most electable candidate. But I will also say, if this was a Republican that said that poor kids are just as bright as white kids, it would not be treated as a gaffe. It would be treated as a statement of racism. I will also say that Joe Biden grabbed a young student's arm last week in Iowa. It barely got any attention in the national media. I remember a time when Corey Lewandowski, from a reactionary standpoint, grabbed a reporter's arm. That reporter was on Good Morning America, and it made national news. So Iowa just stayed a point of bias in the way that these things are covered.
I think voters have a pretty short memory, though, and I think in general on both sides, they can be pretty forgiving. People misspeak. The American public is not stupid. And if Biden allies think that we are that dumb, that we're not going to know that he made a mistake and he misspoke on a rally or a campaign speech,
Let's
then
see
come
how
on. We can all agree on that.
Let's see how available he is or not. Last night again, New Hampshire. This is how the president's framing his opponents. Watch here.
And now we have a group of socialists or communists, could be. They're not far away.